When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. Life is too short for long-term grudges. Patience is a virtue, and I'm learning patience. It's a tough lesson. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. If something's important enough, you should try. Even if the probable outcome is failure. I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. I would like to die on Mars. Just not on impact. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. Great companies are built on great products. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. People should pursue what they're passionate about. That will make them happier than pretty much anything else. I think you should always bear in mind that entropy is not on your side. I think there should be regulations on social media to the degree that it negatively affects the public good. We're running the most dangerous experiment in history right now, which is to see how much carbon dioxide the atmosphere can handle before there is an environmental catastrophe. To make an embarrassing admission, I like video games. That's what got me into software engineering when I was a kid. I wanted to make money so I could buy a better computer to play better video games, nothing like saving the world. When I was in college, I wanted to be involved in things that would change the world. Brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead, other times it will be behind. But brand is simply a collective impression some have about a product. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. Rockets are cool. There's no getting around that. Any product that needs a manual to work is broken. I always invest my own money in the companies that I create. I don't believe in the whole thing of just using other people's money. I don't think that's right. I'm not going to ask other people to invest in something if I'm not prepared to do so myself. Really, the only thing that makes sense is to strive for greater collective enlightenment. Self-driving cars are the natural extension of active safety and obviously something we should do. I think life on Earth must be about more than just solving problems. It's got to be something inspiring, even if it is vicarious. Starting a business is not for everyone. Starting a business, I'd say, number one is have a high pain threshold. We're already cyborgs. Your phone and your computer are extensions of you, but the interface is through finger movements or speech, which are very slow. It's very important to like the people you work with. Otherwise, your job is going to be quite miserable. There have to be reasons that you get up in the morning and you want to live. Why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? If the future does not include being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, I find that incredibly depressing. If we drive down the cost of transportation in space, we can do great things. I will never be happy without having someone. Going to sleep alone kills me. I think we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future. I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. The reality is gas prices should be much more expensive than they are because we're not incorporating the true damage to the environment and the hidden costs of mining oil and transporting it to the US. Whenever you have an unpriced externality, you have a bit of a market failure, to the degree that eternality remains unpriced. I do love email. Wherever possible I try to communicate asynchronously. I'm really good at email. When I was a child, there's one thing I said: I never want to be alone. That's what I would say. I don't want to be alone. I say something, and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. When Henry Ford made cheap, reliable cars, people said, "Nah, what's wrong with a horse?" That was a huge bet he made, and it worked. If I'm not in love, if I'm not with a long-term companion, I cannot be happy. If humanity doesn't land on Mars in my lifetime, I would be very disappointed. I think we are at the dawn of a new era in commercial space exploration. We can't have, like, willy-nilly proliferation of fake news. That's crazy. You can't have more types of fake news than real news. That's allowing public deception to go unchecked. That's crazy. Tesla is here to stay and keep fighting for the electric car revolution. There's a silly notion that failure's not an option at NASA. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. I'm interested in things that change the world or that affect the future, and wondrous, new technology where you see it, and you're like, wow, how did that even happen? How is that possible? The factory is the machine that builds the machine. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic, being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. If you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace, against large, entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. You're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference. The value of beauty and inspiration is very much underrated, no question. But I want to be clear, I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. I'm just trying to think about the future and not be sad. An asteroid or a supervolcano could certainly destroy us, but we also face risks the dinosaurs never saw: an engineered virus, nuclear war, inadvertent creation of a micro-black hole, or some as yet unknown technology could spell the end of us. The problem is that at a lot of big companies, process becomes a substitute for thinking. You're encouraged to behave like a little gear in a complex machine. Frankly, it allows you to keep people who aren't that smart, who aren't that creative. A company is a group organized to create a product or service, and it is only as good as its people and how excited they are about creating. I do want to recognize a ton of super talented people. I just happen to be the face of the companies. The path to the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office, and it should not be through the marketing department. It needs to be through engineering and design. The problem with car dealerships is you've already decided what you want to buy before you even go there, and you're really just going there to talk through some annoying negotiation. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. In order to have your voice be heard in Washington, you have to make some little contribution. I wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and fries my nervous system. I hate writing about personal stuff. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't use my Twitter account. I am familiar with both, but I don't use them. The key to making things affordable is design and technology improvements, as well as scale. I think there are more politicians in favor of electric cars than against. There are still some that are against, and I think the reasoning for that varies depending on the person, but in some cases, they just don't believe in climate change. They think oil will last forever. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon? Doesn't work out. Man has the power to act as his own destroyer, and that is the way he has acted through most of his history. If you don't have sustainable energy, you have unsustainable energy. The fundamental value of a company like Tesla is the degree to which it accelerates the advent of sustainable energy faster than it would otherwise occur. I tend to approach things from a physics framework. And physics teaches you to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. I'm a Silicon Valley guy. I just think people from Silicon Valley can do anything. The United States is definitely ahead in culture of innovation. If someone wants to accomplish great things, there is no better place than the US. A utility can handle up to 20% of production from solar, and that helps the grid because it produces electricity when needed. Solar power peaks in the middle of the day, and that's also when air conditioning is running and businesses are operating, so power production matches usage. If we could do high-speed rail in California just half a notch above what they've done on the Shanghai line in China, and if we had a straight path from LA to San Francisco, as well as the Milk Run, at least that would be progress. I don't spend my time pontificating about high-concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. My opinion is it's a bridge too far to go to fully autonomous cars.